American presidential election here, and a special guest who's gotten up ridiculously early in the morning in Washington, DC. His name is Doug Wead. Let me explain who Doug is. Doug is a historian, he's a conservative commentator. At one time he was a special assistant to George H.W. Bush when he was President of the United States. But more recently he's come to fame and infamy, depending on which part of the story you view here, is that when he was working with the Ron Paul presidential campaign 4 years ago. Now, Ron Paul didn't get an awful lot of votes. He did okay, but he didn't get an awful lot of votes. But because of the efforts of Mr. Wead and others, he got an awful lot of people who went to the Republican convention, and despite the fact that in a state like Louisiana, where Ron Paul only got 6% of the votes, he got 100% of the delegates to vote for him at the convention. This, of course, matters because it's about Donald Trump. If Donald Trump gets the requisite number of delegates, 1,239, well then he's going to be over the line. But most likely he won't get there, which means it's going to matter who physically goes to the convention that will help decide if Trump becomes the nominee of the Republican Party. And Doug Wead joins us now in Washington, DC. Doug, thank you so much, and fascinating to talk to you. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Paul. Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, this is something that I think is the story of the next stage of the Republican battle here, which is as the people vote, the assumption is that, of course, a candidate collects X number of delegates. They go to the convention and they say, you from X state, you vote for Y candidate. All makes sense. But tell us about a process where, say, in 2012, you were able to, and the Ron Paul campaign was able to affect the physical people who go to the convention. How do you do that?
Yeah, these are people like you and I that go to the convention. So if you're Donald Trump and you win this primary in the state of Florida, according to the Florida state GOP or Republican rules, those delegates must vote for Donald Trump on the first 3 ballots. The rules change from state to state. But the actual delegate, the person that represents Florida and goes to the Republican National Convention, they may not like Trump, they may like Cruz, they may like Rubio. They are required by their state GOP law and to vote for Trump on the first 3 ballots, but not after that. So if Ted Cruz recruits the people who represent Florida and go to the National Convention, they could be Cruz delegates voting for Trump according to the state rules. And it's further complicated because the rules can be changed after they get to the Republican National Convention before they vote for the nominee. Those rules could be changed, and they could release all of the delegates to vote their conscience.
So give us an idea about how the people are physically chosen to represent their state at the convention.
Well, I give you a scenario. Let's say you're from the state of Louisiana. You get a call from the GOP Louisiana state chairman. He says, Paul, how would you like to be a delegate to the Republican National Convention? You and I have been buddies. I've talked to you. I got a good feel for what you would do. Would you be loyal to me? Would you stick with me? I'm going to go out on a limb here to promote you. I'm going to put your name on a slate. I need you, Paul, to go to the local GOP precinct meetings for the next 3 months to show up, and then your name's going to be on a slate that will go to the district convention where you'll be voted up or down as a delegate to the state convention. And then if you win there, you go to the state convention, and I say, hey, Paul, you've done a great job. Your name is on the slate to go to the national convention. Can I count on you? You know, some of us are thinking of going to Cruz. Can I count on you to stick with us? Well, you like going to the convention. You like having a Godiva chocolate on your pillow at night, and you like all the booze you want and having your trip paid for. So you're kind of beholden to your chairman. That's the Republican establishment, and they kind of control the Republican National Convention.
So is anything in 2016 happening that's similar to 2012? Because it seems that Donald Trump is able to win a state by sort of the media blitzkrieg. He's got a bit of a machine there that goes out and physically gets people to the polls and all the rest of it. But once the primary's done, it seems that he sort of up stumps and moves on. Is there a campaign that's not Donald Trump that is actually invested in physically making sure that the Cruz people turn up or the Rubio people turn up? Is anyone actually gaming the system regardless of how many delegates they actually won via the vote?
Yes, absolutely they are. And Donald Trump has been brilliant at branding. I think he's forever changed American politics because of that. He's great at planning an event. He has an amazing skill set, but he has not been good at building a ground game, having people at the precinct level, then at the district level, at the state level. So in Louisiana, for example, Donald Trump carried 42% of the vote, but most of the delegates that went to their state convention, which happened just a couple weeks ago, most of them are Cruz supporters, and they got elected as those delegates. A certain portion of them will be required by their own state law, their state GOP laws, to vote for Trump, even though they support Cruz. But as I said, when they get to Cleveland, these delegates can change the rules. And if there's a big media crisis and Trump's in trouble, which is likely, there's a real possibility that some GOP leaders will be saying, we need an open convention. We need to let these people free to vote their conscience, which of course means an insider convention where the party controls it and they pick their own person. And it could be an outsider like Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan. It's not likely, but that's possible, and that could cause quite a division in the party.
Please, not two of those blokes. Quite a division is a good way of putting it, because, at the heart here is that I understand why the establishment doesn't want Donald Trump for all the obvious and far deeper and subtle reasons. But pretty obviously here, it is, while this is a mechanism they can use, what do you think the likelihood is that they would actually deny the person who's got the most votes and the most delegates from actually becoming their nominee when he is clearly the choice of people in 50 different state elections have had their say?
It depends on who you mean by they. There are many different motives that Republican establishment people have, but behind a lot of it is money. And there are some people who are making money off of the system. They're alarmed by Donald Trump, who's like a modern Theodore Roosevelt. He's got some of the conservatives spooked because he's a bit progressive. He's got the money interest people very concerned. When Donald Trump talks about going to the lowest bidder and these people in Washington are stupid, they're just giving money away without a bid. Well, there's a good reason why it doesn't go to the lowest bidder. People are making money, and there's great corruption, and Donald Trump poses a threat. So there are some people in the Republican Party who wouldn't care if they lost and split the party. They would prefer to make their money under a liberal Democrat than not make their money at all. So Donald Trump represents a pretty dramatic change and an end to the gravy train that some of the Republican establishment are experiencing.
If you were able to vote your conscience, what would you do at a convention? If you were able to flip it or do what would you do?
Well, me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Me personally, there's a lot of things about Donald Trump that I don't like. I see him sort of as the class clown. I don't like what he says about the girl across the room, but I do like the fact that he's disrupting the class and that the stifling, domineering, intellectually a stifling teacher is being thrown off of her game or his game. He has really disrupted things here, and we're experiencing corruption. It's reached a bad level. Something has to give. So I like that fact, and if I voted my conscience, I might vote for a change, for a disruption of the process. It's very complicated. There's the Import-Export Bank, there's the central bank. It's very complicated. But one way that your viewers and anybody can understand is corporate welfare. When I went into the White House for George H.W. Bush, I had these conservatives come in and sit me down and say, we need our money to continue to come to our companies. The liberals do it, the conservatives have to do it. So here's taxpayer money that goes direct to a company. That company takes the money and gives it back to politicians as donations. And the pundits that go on TV and talk about these things, their magazines are financed by grants and by advertisements that come from those companies that get money directly from the federal government. And it's just out of hand. I used that as one illustration. It's much more complex when you get into the big banks and the big corporations. It's not truly supply and demand or free enterprise. The game has always been and always will be monopoly.
Yeah. Well, Doug, I'm with you, and if I was there with you in Ohio, I think I'd be voting my conscience with you. I'm for disruption, particularly of corruption. Doug, I want people to check out your website. It's dougwead.com. Lots of different ways that you can follow, read your articles. We might talk again between now and November. Thank you so much, and thank you for getting up so early.
Thank you, Paul.
Good on you. Doug Wead there. Fascinating bloke, isn't he?